emotional moment tonight.
Oh.
So we're going to pass that up maybe next time. Our first speaker of the night is Claudia Mitchell-Cloud. She is presenting Project 5, the Oratorical Speech from the Interpretive Reading Manual, which is a part of the Advanced Communication Series. The objectives of this project are to understand the structure of an effective speech and to interpret and present a famous speech. She will be speaking 9 to 11 minutes. Claudia has selected a speech that was given on the U.S. Senate floor just days before the 10th anniversary of September 11, 2001, by New Hampshire Senator Jeannie Shaheen. Senator Shaheen reflects on the legacy of the attacks and what legacy reveals about the American spirit. Listen to the message delivered on September 7, 2011 in Washington, D.C., just days before the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Claudia?
Madam President, as you know so well as the senator from New York, across the country this weekend, Americans everywhere will gather to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the tragic events that took place on September 11, 2001. Families from every town, from every city and state will mark the day in their own solemn way and take a moment to remember and honor the nearly 3,000 victims of those senseless attacks. More than any episode in recent American history, the events of 9/11 were experienced on a very personal level all across the country. No one was untouched by the tragedy of that day. All of us can remember exactly where we were when we heard the news. We remember those frantic hours as we tried to call loved ones. We remember the silence in our skies as our nation's entire air system shut down. We remember mourning the loss of family, friends, and neighbors. And we remember the fear and uncertainty as we wondered if more attacks were coming. We remember the sight we all watched on television again and again, the sickening sight of the falling towers of the Trade Center. It is a vision that has been forever seared into every American's mind. As governor of New Hampshire at that time, I was actually in Washington for a National Governors Association event on early childhood education. I will never forget looking out my hotel window and seeing the smoke rising from the Pentagon. The attacks of 9/11 forever changed us as a nation. Our entire notion of security was turned upside down. Our government changed, our policies changed, and our view of the world changed. For our children and grandchildren especially, this became one of the defining events of their generation and has left an indelible mark on their worldview. As we gather this weekend, all of us, in our own way, will take a moment to recall those feelings of sadness and anger, and to honor the memories of those we lost. But that loss is not the end of the story, and grief is not the true legacy of 9/11. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by how we respond when we are faced with adversity. September 11th did not cripple us as a nation. Instead, it brought out the best in all of us. Our story is really how we responded in the face of this attack, with courage, resolve, and unity. In the aftermath of September 11th, we showed the world the true meaning of the American spirit. The story of America's response to 9/11 starts on that very day with accounts of heroism that we could never have imagined. We remember the firefighters and the other first responders climbing up the stairwells of the burning World Trade Center while others fled down, and how they made the ultimate sacrifice for their selflessness. We remember the courageous passengers on United Flight 93 who took away the terrorists' greatest weapon, fear, by fighting back, even though it meant their lives. And who knows how many lives they saved when they stopped that attack. In the days that followed, all Americans stepped forward in any way they could. Red Cross centers were overwhelmed with volunteer blood donors. Millions of us donated money and offered up prayers. In New Hampshire, in the days following the attack, I remember joining a crowd of hundreds for a prayer service at St. Paul's Church in Concord. We came together to honor the victims and to comfort each other. The response was incredible. The crowd spilled out into the streets with many waving American flags, holding candles, and singing, "God bless America." In New Hampshire, our state government and our employees refused to buckle under the terrorist threat. We kept the state working on September 11th. I will not forget the more than 100 fire departments across New Hampshire that called our state fire marshal's office to offer their services for assistance to New York, or the countless physicians, rescue workers, and volunteers who made themselves available to help at a moment's notice. Of course, we cannot tell America's story without telling the story of the men and women in our military who have spent the last decade trying to make sure an attack like this never happens again. Since September 11th, more than 5 million men and women have voluntarily joined the armed services to protect America and defend her freedom abroad. More than 6,200 Americans, including 37 troops from New Hampshire, have given the ultimate sacrifice in our nation's defense. Over 45,000 more have been wounded or injured and returned home with lasting scars. Millions of troops and their families have sustained the toughest, most debilitating tempo of deployment in our nation's history, often being deployed 5 or 6 times, enduring constant mental and physical strain to service to our country. The resolve our troops have demonstrated since 9/11 has yielded a string of successes on an extremely complex battlefield. Our men and women in uniform have done everything that has been asked of them. Osama bin Laden has been brought to justice. Countless other high-level terrorist operatives, including the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, have been killed or captured, and the organizations based in Afghanistan and Pakistan remain under constant pressure. Al-Qaeda and its extremist affiliates' deadly ideology is being questioned around the globe, and the remnants of Al-Qaeda's diminishing leadership are disorganized and struggling to reestablish themselves in the face of an aggressive U.S. offensive. As our current Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, has remarked, we are within reach of strategically defeating Al-Qaeda. Although we can't be complacent and we must remain steadfast in our pursuit, our military should be honored for the gains our nation has made against the terrorists who attacked us on September 11th. In New Hampshire, our Air National Guard deployed almost immediately after the attacks, and every day since September 11, 2011, they have been providing persistent air refueling coverage for homeland defense and for our command issues in Iraq and Afghanistan. I will forever remember walking through the New Hampshire airport with the New Hampshire National Guard when flights resumed after 9/11. As we walked through, people everywhere stopped what they were doing to applaud the National Guard for their efforts to keep the people of New Hampshire safe. In the decades since the attacks, Americans have found new appreciation for the service these citizens, soldiers provide, And Americans outside the military have learned they have a role to play too. With the heroes of United Flight 93 as their inspiration, everyday Americans have stopped a number of terrorist plots from succeeding. Passengers and flight personnel stopped the December 2001 bomber, the attempt by shoe bomber Richard Reed, and they stopped the Christmas Day 2009 attempt aboard the Northwest airline flight. The attempted Times Square bombing last year, as you remember, was in part averted by an alert New York City street vendor. Perhaps most importantly, as we remember America's 9/11 story this weekend, we should all reflect often the unity we demonstrate in the face of this terrible attack. On September 11th, we were not Republicans or Democrats, black or white, rich or poor. We were all Americans. The attack focused our attention on our common bonds and on the American ideals we hold dear. We were determined to prove, despite our differences, that the United States of America would persevere and endure. While we have not always maintained that sense of unity in the years since, our memory of it has inspired us and continually reminded us of what is possible when we reach for the best in ourselves. When the history books are written and America's 9/11 story is told to the generations to follow, I hope it will tell how we came together to remind the entire world of what this country stands for and who we are as a people. How, after our darkest day, we rose up with new determination. How instead of turning inward, we chose to confront the evil that had visited our shores and to fight on. And how we continue to be the beacon of hope, liberty, and opportunity that we have always been to the world.